Okay, welcome to the 8th common session of Sunoikis Digital Classics Summer Semester 2018. Today we have a session about mastering Sanskrit and Latin words, and our guests are from Croatia. We have Neven Jovanović, who has been contributing since the beginning to Sunoikis Digital Classics, because he participated in the first meetings we had in Leipzig, helping us a lot to build the program, and now still is contributing a lot with his students and his collaborators. And today, from Zagreb, we have Neven Jovanović with two students working on Sanskrit, Mia Stubičar, I apologize for my pronunciation, and Anna Vragolović. And so we are very excited about this session, so to see how we can work with both languages. So Neven and Mia and Anna, welcome back to Sunoikisis, and thank you for your contribution today. I think you can start, and please unmute you.
Okay, thank you very much, and hello to everybody from Zagreb. This time, first of all, I would like to remind everybody that there was a few years ago, and there still is in a way, there was a great project led by Greg Crane. The project name was Global Philology, and this is the project that reminded me how Greek and Latin are not the only classical languages, neither is Hebrew the only classical language, but if we really want to think about classical languages, we also have to think about classical Arabic, we have to think about Sanskrit, we have to think about classical Chinese. And if we want to widen this into the world of historical languages, the languages which were very important once, but are now only subjects of study, then the field can grow. And what we need to do is first to connect, to get all those people, all those philologists to learn about each other, because each of us, for ourselves, there are few of us, but if we are together, then we can do a lot more. So this year, I have been lucky in Sunoikisis because I have with me two wonderful students who know a lot about Sanskrit, about which I myself don't know anything, because I ran away from my second Sanskrit class, which we had to take. And since then, my knowledge of Sanskrit had not advanced until I met Anna and Mia, and it so turned out that they both are studying Indology, that is Indian cultures and Indian languages, and as well as Latin. Why is Indology really? It's popular almost as Latin in Zagreb.
It's not
so?
as Latin, but it is popular, and many students like Bollywood movies, and they like songs. And I personally I like dead languages, and in Indology we are learning about five dead languages, I think. Sanskrit, Prakrit, Old Persian, Western, Vedic Sanskrit, which is a little bit different than classical Sanskrit, and Prakrit. You have a group of languages like Shauraseni, Magadhi, Adhamagadhi. It's not just one language. You have.
I'm amazed already.
Yeah.
and I thought that learning Latin is complicated, but anyway, our task today will be to combine those two subjects that Anna and Mia are studying. We will show you what we did with Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit and in Latin. But what we did, we were also using the digital tools. And what we did would not be possible in a way without these digital tools. So this is our main theme. We will now share the screen for the slides, and I hope everything goes well. Just a moment, please.
Yes, it works. I can see your screen. And
yeah. Okay. Just a moment. And it will be much better if we start from the beginning. Yeah, but we are okay. We are ready now.
Excellent.
So the outline of our hour today is Mia will be presenting the Bhagavad Gita as the literary work, just to remind you what it is and when was it composed and written. Then Anna will tell you about the German scholar Schlegel, who in the 19th century translated Bhagavad Gita, but not into German, but into Latin. It will be my task then to explain how did we get the digital versions of all these texts, and then we will all explain what we did next. We wanted to develop digital exercises that some imagined students of both Sanskrit and Latin will be able to use to improve their knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, but to do this on their own using Moodle as the learning platform. So this is more or less our program. And first of all, about Bhagavad Gita, Mia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Neven. Bhagavad Gita, the meaning of it is the song of the god, is an episode recorded in the great Sanskrit poem of the Hindus, the Mahabharata. It occupies chapters 23 to 40 of Book 6 of the Mahabharata and is composed in the form of a dialogue between the Pandava prince Arjuna and Lord Krishna, who is an avatar of the Hindu god Vishnu.
We have them in. We have them here, yes.
Yes. We
so
have
they,
here.
That's that.
The blue man is Krishna, and next to him is Arjuna, the warrior Arjuna. So the work was composed perhaps in the 1st or 2nd century CE, and it is commonly known as the Gita. Gita means the song in Sanskrit. It contains approximately 700 verses, but some Indian authors like Gambhirananda claim that old manuscript had 745 verses. And the final recension of the work was made in the Gupta period. The Gupta period was in India from 4th to 7th centuries AD. And the earliest manuscript source dates back to Shankara's commentary in the 9th century, but the most preserved manuscript of Bhagavad Gita dates from 19th century.
So if I may interrupt, the Bhagavad Gita was actually written and redacted and so on during the time of Latin literature, during the time of Roman Empire.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, okay. So we go to which slide? To this one?
Yes, I just wanted to show you this manuscript from the 19th century. It is probably written on the paper, but the oldest manuscripts that are not surviving are on the palm leaves.
And they didn't use papyrus in India.
No.
Yeah, of course.
No.
They use the palm leaves.
Okay. Yeah. In return, and I want to say something about the story of Bhagavad Gita. On the brink of a great battle between warring branches of the same family, Arjuna is suddenly overwhelmed with misgivings about the justice of killing so many people, some of whom are his friends and relatives, and he expresses his qualms to Krishna, his charioteer. Krishna's reply expresses the central themes of the Gita. He actually persuades Arjuna to do his duty as a man born in the class of warriors, Kshatriyas, and his duty is to fight, and the battle takes place. Krishna's argument incorporates many of the basic teaching of the Upanishads. that are speculative texts compiled between 1000 and 600 BC, and as well as of the philosophy of Samkhya Yoga, which stresses dualism between soul and matter.
So basically, Krishna tells why he has to fight.
Yeah. Krishna is the most important character here. And he also argues that one can kill only the body because the soul is immortal and it transmigrates into another body. And for those who have understood the true teachings, the soul achieves release or extinction. The name for extinction in Sanskrit is nirvana, and it is a freedom from the wheel of rebirth. Krishna also resolves the tension between the Vedic injunction to sacrifice and to collect the record of good actions, karma, and the late Upanishadic injunction to meditate and amass knowledge, which is jnana in Sanskrit. The solution he provides is the path of devotion, bhakti, and with right understanding, one need not renounce actions, but merely the desire for the fruits of actions and acting without desire. So I want to explain the most important, but first, let me say something about the beginning. You can see on the screen, Devanagari script. This is the script of Hindi and Sanskrit. And I want to read this for you.
But we have been working with the transliterated script, so I didn't manage to learn Devanagari yet.
Thank you. But I know this verse by heart. So, Dharmakshetre, Kurukshetre, Samaveta Yutsava, Mamakah Pandavashaiva, Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. The translation is, in Kurukshetra, the field of the Kurus, and also the field of righteousness, both my sons and Pandu's sons gathered, eager to fight. What did they do? So,
and we can see where the Kurukshetra is here on the slide.
Kurukshetra is a city in the northern Indian state Haryana. Today, Haryana has more than 25 million people, 6 times more than Croatia, and its official language is, of course, Hindi. So you can go to the term Dharma. There it is. As you can see, there are many meanings of Dharma, and according to Monier William Dictionary, this is not the complete list, but fundamentally it means what is right. Early in the text, responding to Arjuna's despondency, Krishna asked him to follow his Swadharma. What is the meaning of Swadharma? Swadharma is the dharma that belongs to a particular man. That man is Arjuna, and he is a member of particular varna, particular class. He is the warrior, he is the kshatriya. So, later, many traditional followers of Krishna accept and believe that every man is unique in nature, and Swadharma for each and every individual is also unique, and it must be followed strictly with soul bhakti. Bhakti is devotion, and shraddha. Shraddha is belief. So the Gita has always been cherished by many Hindus for its spiritual guidance, but it achieved new prominence in the 19th century when British in India lauded this as the Hindu equivalent of the New Testament, and when 2 American philosophers, particularly the New England transcendentalists Ralph Waldo Emerson on the left and Henry David Thoreau on the right, considered it to be the pivotal Hindu text.
So they made it actually important in American culture.
Of course, yeah.
And how did they read it? Did they learn Sanskrit?
Actually, they read it in English. I will say it just in a second. So, the Bhagavad Gita was first translated into English in the 1785 by Charles Wilkins. He was an Orientalist and a member of Asiatic Society, and soon the work was translated into other European languages such as Latin, German, French, Russian, etc.
Okay, thank you. So this is the short history of Bhagavad Gita and how did it come to Europe, and as we have seen, to America as well. But what is important for us is that Bhagavad Gita was translated relatively early into Latin. But Anna, will you tell us more about this? And you just give me the sign when I have to change the slide.
Thank you. So my topic is Latin translation of Bhagavad Gita. If we want to understand how and why Bhagavad Gita was translated into Latin, we have to go back to the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the period of Romanticism in Germany. It was a period of growing interest in and the knowledge of Asian culture and Oriental languages and literature. German Romanticists were with great interest following the Indological work of the Englishmen, who were the pioneers of European studies of a new scientific area, Indology, and who made some of the first translations from Sanskrit into English. One of the translators was August Wilhelm Schlegel, who lived from 1767 to 1845. Schlegel was a major scholar of the German Romantic movement and the best of Shakespearean translators. He started studying Sanskrit in 1815 in Paris at the Collège de France, where de Chésy, first French Sanskritist, was teaching Sanskrit. As early as 1818, Schlegel was appointed professor of Sanskrit literature in the University of Bonn. There, he created the first center of Indian philology in Germany, and he started publishing the scholarly journal Indische Bibliothek, and also set up a Sanskrit printing press.
Okay, let me just ask you something, if I may. He was dead by 1845.
Yes.
That means before the year 1848, the year of the spring of the nations, when the modern states were actually born. So everything important was already being done about Sanskrit in Europe.
Yes.
And this is so, okay, thank you.
So in 1823, Schlegel published the Latin translation of the Bhagavad Gita. This was the part of the series known as the Indian Library, which also included Latin translations of part of the epic Ramayana and the Hitopadesha. When we talk about Bhagavad Gita and in its reception, it is important to note that the German philosopher took it as the quintessential statement of Indian philosophy. This is the front page of the first edition of Schlegel's translation of Bhagavad Gita. So back to Bhagavad Gita, it was very important for German Romanticists, and this was a reason which led to Schlegel's attempt to translate the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, and you will also notice that on the front page, it is not only Latin that is present, but also some Greek,
yeah.
Because it is presented as Hespesion Melos. So it is not only a classical work in the sense of the Latin classics, but also in a sense it is equal to the Greek literature as well.
Yeah. Schlegel did not share completely the Romanticist enthusiasm for the Gita, but he later studied it from a Christian perspective, identifying the good parts that coincide with Christian doctrines and dismissing the remainder as myth or superstition. He also paid great attention to the problem of translation of text. For him, translation is not necessarily a literal translation. The translator must be able to translate the spirit of the text. He must follow the letter, but he must also be able to capture some of the innumerable, indescribable marvels that do not reside in the letter, but float above it like a breath of spirit. As a pioneer in the study of the Sanskrit and Indo-European linguistics, Schlegel paid considerate attention to structural adequacy within his translations, focusing on issues such as grammatical accidents, syntax, word formation, and rhythmic aspects of the language. Thus, for the translation of Bhagavad Gita, he decided to use Latin as being the language of universal communication among the learned, and considering the Latin language more suited for translation of Sanskrit than any other language. while taking into account.
So why was Latin more suited than any other language? What do you think?
I think because its syntax, word formation, and all the other aspects of the language are very similar to Sanskrit.
This is what we were being able to see when we aligned the translations, and we will show you this later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Schlegel considered Latin appropriate for rendering the abundant nuances of Sanskrit, as well as a great resource of ideas for literary expression. He also considered Greek as an alternative for translation, but he thought that Latin is
better. Okay, great, thank you. It is now my job to tell you how did we find or how did we produce the digital sources. So first of all, I would like you to show you what I have learned in this Sunoikisis course. I have learned about the scholarly resources for Sanskrit on the internet. The two of them were most important, and incidentally, both of them are German. And I think people connected with these projects were also in the Global Philology project. One of them is a corpus prepared in Göttingen. It is called Gretil. And the other is prepared in Heidelberg. It is called the Digital Corpus of Sanskrit DCS. Let me just show you briefly, here, how a page, how Gretil looks like. Gretil is a really good place when you need a plain text, a plain Sanskrit transliteration, and this is where we got the text of Bhagavad Gita. On the other hand, the digital corpus of Sanskrit is, I think, an excellent resource for students, because when you go to a certain sentence, then you see that this sentence is morphologically analyzed. Unfortunately, it is more about more a resource for individual teaching and studying, so we were not able to get these morphological annotations out in a way that would be simple for us to use. So we were not able to align morphology as well as the words themselves, even though it will be quite interesting to see how the texts are similar or different morphologically. Of course, we needed a copy of Schlegel's Latin translation, and luckily a lot of them is around in the form of digital facsimiles. We chose an example, a copy that is available on the archive.org, which is a great collection of digitized books that are free for everybody to use. There is also the first edition, so we were able to check whether there are some differences and so on. And we used the OCR text, and then I have to say mostly Mia and Anna and a third of our colleagues, they had to correct the Latin according to the usual rules and taking out the usual typos that exist when you OCR a text. So this is a basis for a real machine readable, for a real digital edition that we will be preparing later on. So now we were just exploring this. When we had a digital text, then we were able to create first a concordance. So we were able to treat the Bhagavad Gita as a corpus, as a digital corpus. And actually, what is a concordance? Anna, can you tell us about this?
Oxford Dictionary defines concordance as an alphabetical list of the words, especially the important ones, present in a text or texts, usually with citations of the passages concerned or with the context displayed on a computer screen. one of the most famous concordances and the most exhausting concordances is the Concordance of Bible. A Bible concordance is an alphabetical listings of words and phrases found in the Holy Bible, which shows where the terms occur throughout all books of Scripture. For the purpose of the concordance of our text, we use the tool called Antconc from Lawrence Anthony's website. It's a free corpus analysis toolkit for concordancing and text analysis.
Yeah, well, if I may just interrupt, we chose Antconc because it was simple to use, it is simple to find, and all of us installed Antconc on our computers without much trouble. Was it so, more or less? You have to say yes now. and also we were able quite quickly to start exploring the Antconc. When you are probably familiar with the tool, but when you install it, when you look at it, or in our case, when you look at the Sanskrit concordance, you see something like this. What are we actually looking at, Mia?
We are looking at the uchyate, is the passive, third person, singular passive.
So at all occurrences
Yes.
of uchyate in the Bhagavad Gita.
All the occurrences, and there are many of them, as you can see.
So it is a frequent word. Yeah. What does it actually mean?
It means to say. Uchyate means it comes from the
speak to
to
declare.
speak, to
It's
declare.
a form of verb watch.
Yeah.
Okay. So but please, Anna, we have interrupted you. Please go on.
Sorry. Okay, we see all the occurrences, and we can see where the verb is in sentence, and we can use it. For example, if we look at number 16 and 17, prakritir uchyate and hetur uchyate are examples of sanhi. And now I need to explain sanhi, which is a cover term for wide variety of sound changes that occur at morpheme or word boundaries. So the word is actually prakritih, and in front of vocal it changes in R. And with this tool we can choose many examples and create tasks for to make the learning of sanhi easier.
So if we see a lot of the same thing happening in different sentences in different contexts, then we can remember not only. Did you learn this like this, or how did you remember sanhi?
I was writing this on paper.
Yeah, really.
Same thing, but on paper. Not online.
Oh, so you invented the concordance as well. Okay. What is interesting, of course, we did this mostly because we were able to create word lists quite quickly. And here you see a word list which has words in Latin and words in Sanskrit all together. But of course, we could take one out if we needed. The important thing here is to show that here we know how many times a form occurs in a text. So here you can see, for example, the number 16, uvacha. Oh, I have learned something. So the number 16 appears 57 times in the part of the Bhagavad Gita that we have analyzed. So this is obviously a frequent word. We have used concordances to say which words are frequent. Because why are the frequent words important?
If we have frequent verbs, this can help a teacher to decide which words to teach first. The most frequent verbs in Latin would be prepositions and conjunctions, but we can look at the other parts of speech which are interesting to us. So teacher can choose the most frequent verbs and nouns and motivate the students by telling them that they will understand the majority of Bhagavad Gita if they learn them first.
Okay, excellent. So our first step was to create a concordance, but then we wanted to do something else with our corpora. We wanted to align sentences, and for aligning, as as those of you who are listening to Sunoikisis will know, we have used the Perseids platform, and we have used all the possibilities that it offers us for reviewing work of others, because we have our own editorial board, and then Mia and Anna aligned some text and submitted this. I wasn't actually able to check this, but I was the board was the place to get all those texts together. And here we will show you what a page, how does an aligned sentence in Latin and in Sanskrit and Latin looks like. Mia, can you explain what we are looking at? Yeah.
On the left side, you can see the verse in Sanskrit, and on the right, the same verse in Latin. But we just take a look at this Ashrupurna collection on the left. This is a nominal compound, Sanskrit nominal compound, that is actually containing 4 different words: Ashru, Purna, Akula, and Ikshana. And on the left, you see in the same order the Latin words: lacrimis, suffusum, turbatus, oculos. But what we have to know the rules of Sanhi that Anna mentioned before, because it is impossible to take apart and understand a Sanskrit sentence without knowing those rules.
Okay, but here we can see somebody who knows Latin better, can see, thanks to your work, that Ashrupurna Aculationam actually means lacrimis, suffusum, turbatus, oculos, and that Schlegel, when he translated this, that he preserved the word order. What did he do elsewhere? Did he translate tam?
Yes.
Yeah. Was he correct when he was translating?
Yes, this is accusative. Yes,
yeah?
it's correct.
Yeah? And
Tatha is the same. Yes.
Yeah. But Tatha, do you see here? He changed the word order, because what is misericordia? Misericordia commotum.
Krpaya vishtam.
Yeah. So you see what Anna was saying about the literary quality of Schlegel's Latin translation. I think that he put this eta inside because of the Latin, not because of Sanskrit, because his feeling for Latin style was such that you don't want to say hunc ita misericordia commotum, but misericordia ita commotum. This is, in a way, this is better or nicer. So when we have aligned texts, we can study this sentence by sentence, like we have tried to show you here briefly, but we can also export these texts. You know that we have options to export the alignments in several formats, and then we can use the connections that we have produced to transform a sentence into a set of exercises. And with this, we are coming to the most important part of our experiment, so to say, because we have done this not only to study Schlegel's translation, but we have done this to use Latin to exercise Sanskrit, to use Sanskrit to exercise Latin. To do this, we again reached for the tools which are simple, which have been developed to be simple, and which are used in a lot of places. We have used the teaching platform called Moodle, because we didn't have to install anything. It is already installed for our faculty, and for some reason it is called the Omega in the University of Zagreb Faculty of Humanities. Don't ask me why, but there is a set of add-ons for Moodle developed by the Norwegian firm called H5P.org. and they are quite nicely designed, so it is really a very attractive design. We have used these add-ons to produce the exercises, because in our experience, it is not only important if you for us to develop the exercises, they also have to look appealing. People have to want to do this, and at the same time, they have to look at it as a game, as much as possible when we are talking about Sanskrit and Latin. So we will now demonstrate two types of exercises that we have developed. And here you actually see a part of the page in Omega. This is the page of our course, and this is how the first exercise looks like. This is called in H5P org, it is called the dialogue cards. So how does it function? Yes. Can you explain this, Mia?
Dialogue cards are text-based turning cards that can be used as a drill to help learners memorize words, expression, or sentences. On the front of the card, there's a hint for a word or expression, and by turning the card, the learner reveals a corresponding word or expression.
So here we see a word in Sanskrit,
yes,
and we read it, and then we try to say this. How would we say this in Latin?
Yeah.
Do we know how to say this in Latin?
Yes, we know, but first, take a look how, as Neven said, it has to be appealing, attractive, and it has to look like a game. So
and it is easy to make something appealing when you're doing with India. So there, yes, everything is
pictures
appealing.
Are colorful, and here Krishna is blue. He has a lot of ornaments, so he is attractive at some point. And we have the same nominal compound that we had before, Ashapurna Kula action, and we can turn it.
Mm-hmm. So if
equivalent is, as you may remember, lacrimis opus oculus.
Okay, so the idea is that here the learner has to test himself or herself. You see something in Sanskrit, then you ask yourself, did I learn it? Can I remember this in Latin? You can do this for an individual word.
Course, but here it's much easier because we added image. Why is important to add image? Because people can memorize it better and easier. So you can see here a picture of eyes.
Yeah, this is what the pedagogy said. You have to mobilize all the senses if you want to learn something. And here you have to remember what the ikshanam means in Sanskrit. Yeah. But not only what it means in Sanskrit, but what it means in Latin. Because in this sentence, yes, sorry
for interrupting, one word is missing, so oculos.
The oculos is missing, and we can check. And this is correct. And so we simply go on.
Here you see a picture.
And you get the idea. This is a very simple format, and this is basically, it can be done on paper, and actually we made our prototype on paper, as I remember, but the idea is that this can, when you do it on paper, then you have to make as many copies as you have students, but here everybody can do this. And if you have it on paper, then you have to remember when you put it and so on. But here people can study this using their mobile phones when they are traveling to lectures or whatever. And this is all there. The other example is similar, but slightly more complicated and slightly more, let's say, it has more effects as the from the programming side. Here you will see the same, because we just wanted to test the formats. So here you will see the same sentence, the same part of the sentence in Sanskrit, and here we have to fill in the blank. It says lacrimis suffusum turbatos, and then we have to remember what comes next. Or we can ask somebody, or if you want to join us, if you want to propose the answer, but we will just try to type this in. So I have to type in oculos, not making any mistakes probably. And what is important and what is different here is that here the system checks you, and here you know whether you did something right or wrong in another. You learn this in another way. So the same thing, but what is missing here? Yeah, you have learned this too well. But you will see me making a mistake in probably. But let us just demonstrate what happens, and I will have to demonstrate. So what happens here? Of course, we have to type in a Sanskrit word. And I wouldn't know how to type it in even if I knew it, but it is something like the Ashru Purna Lekshana.
Purna Kulekshana.
Okay, it's lucky for me that I have this help, but of course what you will see is that it is not correct because I have missed, I didn't put in all the diacritics which are necessary for this type of exercise. Of course, it can be designed. It can be done in Moodle in H5P org. It is no problem. But of course, what we have to learn is also the diacritics when we are learning Sanskrit. So perhaps we would also want to see this. And this has been a simple demonstration, but we wanted to show here the whole life of a digital exercise. It starts with a teacher selecting what I want my pupils, my students to learn. Then we go on preparing, thinking about the exercise, and then we actually produce such an exercise, and of course we have to check it. Some of the parts of this process can be done by a computer, and as we have seen, we can compare texts using alignments, we can study frequencies and other contexts, other relationships of the words using concordance, but we can also use attractive formats such as Moodle and H5P org to develop the exercises themselves, and then the exercises are checking themselves. We don't have, we as teachers, and somebody who has 90 students will appreciate this, we as teachers don't have to correct this, we only have to prepare such exercises. But what are the possible next steps? And what is actually interesting? We didn't have the time to do this summer, but obviously, once you have many sentences aligned, in our case, Sanskrit aligned with Latin, then you can write a program which will automatically create flashcards such as we have seen. We only decide on the form, on the format, but then we write a program once, and then we have 100 exercises or 1,000 exercises, and then only the only task of the professor or the teacher is to select what we want to show our students. We can even think about the completely automated system which selects on the basis of how well the students did in the exercises. And there are such systems around. There are already. the next thing that is important and that is not present in Moodle, but it's also possible, is we want people not to learn not only the rules, but also to learn the words, to learn the content. And we, being human, we tend to forget the content after some time. Some of the people, for example, students, tend to forget this quite quickly after the exam. So I have heard. Of course, this is a commonly known phenomenon. So people have tried to correct this by using a system which is called spaced repetition. The basic idea is that once I have learned a word, for example, then I have to look at it again in a week, or in 2 weeks, or in 4 weeks, or in a year, and so on, so just to remember, to refresh my memory. And somebody else, that is a computer, can be my accountant. It can write down when did I last see this word, whether did I remember this word or not, and so on. So the computer can decide to show this to me again after some time. This is the main idea of the spaced repetition, and there are some very nice spaced repetition systems around, freely available on the internet. So this is the other possibility how we can extend our idea. Not to mention that we have tested just the two formats of the H5P, and there are a lot more of them. So if you are a teacher, if you like to play around with designing exercises, you can really do a lot with computers. And I think this is the part that we wanted to show to you. And I hope that we can open we can start a discussion now. Just a moment. Let me unshare the screen. Okay.
That was great. Yes, super. So we have people in the Hangout. If you want to ask questions.
Yeah, I will start off, I guess, and just say this is Miriam, who I think is here posing under her sister's name, and I are working on trying to rethink the way we teach Greek and learn Persian, which is showing my subject position. And we're starting with the Shahnameh and the Odyssey, and thinking about how do we sort of build this up, starting directly with the original text using alignments, tree banking, and all of that. So we're sort of still blue skying and brainstorming right now, but I think this is very compelling. And what are some of the spaced repetition systems that exist that you would work with? Because I know the term, and there's like memorize and so on, but are there things we could actually use, put our own data in?
Yes, of course, I'm very glad that you mentioned Persian, because this is, in a way, this is a missing link when we go nearer to India. And I'm very glad that we will be later on, that we will have there will be a lecture on Persian. So we wanted to have Sanskrit also, because we wanted to widen a little bit set of languages. First, I would like to comment on your, I know that your idea is that somebody can simply start learning a language by looking carefully at the translation. And this is something that, well, actually, I would have to experiment with this. I would have to see whether I understand some of the Sanskrit by looking at Latin. Some of the things are simple. some of them, like Sandhi, they are quite hard, I have to say.
Well, I think that, I mean, in my own experience, I goofing off from writing the Open Greek and Latin proposal last week and cruising Europeana for stuff on Sophocles, I bumped into a translation into Polish that was well printed. And I said, well, what would happen if I put this in Abbey? And I said, oh, it looked like Polish. And I don't know what Polish looks like, but it had funny characters. And I created, I have a translation of the Ajax in Polish from 1881 in TEI-XML. And then I said, well, what happens if I can try to align this? And the Google Translate is remarkably good. You know, the Polish world must have put a lot of time in building up language resources for their language. Because
aligned a Greek translation from Greek in Polish using Google Translate.
I started to do that, and it was very, I could sort of do it, and it was frustrating because the translation is very loose. So I could tell, like, I just did a few lines. I could tell, well, this line, I see what it's doing, but I can't find any words to line up, even though I understand the line, because he's reconceptualizing it. But of course, the thing I was missing was the tree bank. And what the tree bank's missing is the the paradigm annotations. So you see the patterns. And yet, I think a lot can be done. But the real question is, you know, how do we put this together? How do we bootstrap it? We found for the Bhagavad Gita, it must be like the Shahnameh is enormous. Do we know how many words? Well, surely we know, but do we know right now how many words the Bhagavad Gita is?
700 words.
The verses and words.
1,000 and 1,000.
No, 8,000 and something. 8,000 words.
Oh.
So it must be. I mean, the Shahnameh is 50,000 lines, or doublets. Or two is 100,000 lines, or something like that. And much bigger than the Iliad and the Odyssey. But we were looking just the question of like vocabulary, and so we had the tree bank for the Iliad and the Odyssey, and the standard for the first year of Greek seems to be 500 or so words. Is what people try to learn. We said, well, if you learn the top 500 words in the Iliad and in Homer or in the Odyssey, well, the least common of those words shows up 25 times in Homer. And so I can say, well, we're going to read Odyssey 5, and you have to recognize everything in context, but there's this 500 words, and they all show up 25 times or more, so I expect you to recognize any of these 500 words in any random context. And how's that going to work? And then if we have alignments, and we have tree banking, then people can really bootstrap themselves. So what happens when you have like one word like dharma? One of the few words that my sons would know because of Lost.
Yeah, and nirvana is also a popular word, I hear.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And my younger son was a big Nirvana fan.
Nirvana.
So, and that's a whole nother subject. But so anyway, I think that. But the other point was this Polish. I was looking at Polish, and I was, to be honest, I was like thinking I should be doing this with Croatian. There's Neven.
Yeah, we didn't print any translations in century, unfortunately. But you asked about the spaced system. So the one that I have some experience with is called Anki, and it is quite simple. So it is not as flashily done as memorized. And here with Anki, it is more. It's more concentrated on you as a learner, because, for example, you have to decide yourself whether you did right or wrong. You see the solution, and then you have to press the button. You have to grade yourself in a way, saying, okay, I did it fine. No, I have to look at it again, and so on. which is in a way interesting if you're a disciplined person. Perhaps it can even turn you into a more disciplined person. I wouldn't know. But it is quite easy to prepare exercises for Anki because their format is very simple.
I've already found it.
Yeah, it works on phones, but it's quite, so it is more about when it will show you what, and it's not about a flashy design.
This is very interesting because I've been using Quizlet just because it was easy.
Yeah. This is different because this keeps a database on your machine or on your phone and so on. So it isn't. It has this kind of a central forum or something, but it works much better on the individual device. Yeah. So Greg has got his homework, and what about the others?
I also have a question. Sorry, I'm hiding behind my sister's account. The question is, so you have mentioned that you can generate exercises on Moodle. Do you have any specific exercise type, or do you categorize them in somehow in closed or open exercises? So do you have any specific strategies for generating exercises?
So it is unfortunately it's a bit more complicated at the moment because the H5P and Moodle both, they are designed for teachers who will do everything by hand. There is a possibility to import exercises, but it takes at the moment it takes some fiddling, so it can be done. I think the other part of your question has to do with designing the exercises. So if I understood you correctly, when you say open and closed, it means do I have to know the answer before or not?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So there are, as you know, in Moodle there are two types. Of course, you can have the close exercises with the given answers. If there is some oscillation, you can plan for this. For example, if we want to say that something is correct even without the diacritics, then we can offer this as a possible solution. But the open exercises, they cannot be graded automatically. No, there is no such system at the moment. The systems are simple to use, but they are also quite simple in their logic, so to say.
But do they offer the option that you ask the students to align, or it's not, or you should just stick to the conventional exercises like multiple choice and something like that?
I think there is something that can be used for aligning. Is it? I think they call it. What's the word? There is something where you can put one word or one image or whatever on place of the other. So I think this can be used for aligning, but we will have to look into this. We didn't think about it. We didn't think about checking the alignments actually. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the Moodle resource is, I imagine, is for students in Zagreb, but do you plan also to open it? Because in Moodle it's possible to have guests. I don't know in this case if it's possible and if you plan to do that. So to have external students accessing the resource.
You mean the guests in Moodle?
Yes.
We can make our course open for the guest account for the guest access, and I will do this after we finish this, so you can visit and look at this part. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. In fact, this was my question, if you wanted and if you can, because I can understand that. But I have
because you know the Moodle philosophy, because I as a teacher can know quite a lot about what my students are doing on Moodle. They tend not to give access to guests, but for this one we can do this.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, this is great for Sunoikisis. And I have another question. Probably you mentioned at the beginning, but I don't remember. So this is an experiment for involving students with different curricula, or because I don't know exactly. I imagine that in your curriculum you can of course choose languages. In this case, as far as I see, so Maya and Anna, they are studying Sanskrit and Latin, but this is the first year you're trying something like that. Do you plan to do that with other languages? So this, if you can tell us something about your program and your curriculum.
So you probably remember that when we started planning this year's seminar, we wanted to do something for Greek and Latin. But then it turned out, because here in Zagreb, Sunoikis is an elective course, so people can choose. At the moment, only people who are studying Greek or Latin can choose this course. But in Zagreb, everybody has, most of the people studying at the Faculty of Humanities, they are studying 2 subjects. So both Mia and Anna are studying not only Latin, but also Indology. There are combinations of Latin and history, or for example, Romanian and Latin, and so on. So probably it is important for us that everything can be combined with everything else. There are some more logical combinations, there are some more strange combinations as it happens. But because this is on our side, Sunoikis is quite a small course, so we have been able to tailor this precisely to what we are able to do and what we want to do.
Okay, thank you. I'm super happy about that, and thank you. So, no, because this is great. This is, I think, really a cool experiment. Well, we still have a few minutes, but I don't know if we have other questions in our Hangout, and we have people also on YouTube. I'm sure I have students on YouTube, but they are shy. They don't.
Oh, we are getting some interesting messages. Yeah. I mean, what is interesting is that a lot of universities in Croatia, even some of the schools, the high schools and elementary schools, they all have Moodle. Which means that it will be easy for us to share exercises as well. Probably not for Sanskrit, but if we have exercises aligning Latin and Croatian or some other combination, then it can go around, and we can also see how the students in high school, do they perform differently than the students at the university, and so on. So then somebody who is interested in learning and pedagogy can really make other types of experiments with this.
Excellent, good to know, because of course, well, also Sunoikis is technically for master students, for graduate students, but definitely we can use our classes also in.
Yeah, I was just speaking how this can be a theme for somebody who is studying pedagogy as well, or who is in educational science or something like that.
Yes, especially for teachers who want to learn how to use these techniques for translation alignment, textual alignment, and definitely banking. I know that in Italy we have teachers in high school, in the Liceo Classico. They have been trying to use these tools, and so definitely that's another great resource, especially if we also have concrete contents. And Moodle, as we were saying before, is another possibility because it's possible to open it and so it can be used also not only in the class but with other remote students. Excellent. So I'm very happy about this. And well, it's a lot of fun because last week we had Eleni and Angelos from Florida, and they showed us how to use Latin for writing code. But it was super nice to have a human readable code in Latin and also using other natural languages. Today we have seen, okay, Sanskrit and Latin, translation alignment, and all the difficulties, of course, we have. And next week we will have a session about Open Persian, which is a project we have in Leipzig, and Mariam Faradi was with us before, and she will lead the session teaching us how to read Farsi. And we have a community in Tehran also working on this. So I don't know if we have, and I see in the chat we have Anise Ferreira from Brazil. She's always with us in the Hangout. And yes, she's also interested in Moodle, so we can see if we can expand this to our Portuguese community in the other hemisphere. Well, I think it's a lot. So really, thank you very much for this, for preparing all these things. Really, it was great, and I think that this session is really a model for Sunoikisis. So we have Neven with his students, so it was really a discussion, and then after that we also had a long discussion also with Greg Crane. So, well, thank you very much, and we will see next week for our session about Open Persian, and I hope we can plan for next year. We already have a program for Sunoikis Digital Classics for next year, and definitely we will involve our friends from Croatia, because every year they have a surprise with I have to say that, and even he has contributing since the beginning to Sunoikis with many, many ideas and a lot of data. Okay, so thank you very much. Goodbye, and well, good night maybe is early, but for our time zone is okay, maybe.
Yeah, and of course, thanks to everybody from Sunoikisis, because what else did we do here? Mia and Anna also had to watch the lectures and write reports, and I even made them write reports in English, but I didn't correct their English. I think that it is really a great format to get introduced to digital methods and philology. And especially it is important that we have everything on YouTube so that it is available at all time. We can keep it up, we can skip the holidays and so on. So it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with you, and hope we meet again soon.
Thank you very much, really, thank you. Okay, so see you soon, and see you next week for other people. Bye, and thank you.
Bye. Bye.